The Raiders are reportedly moving on from quarterback Gardner Minshew, according to The Athletic. It's expected that the team will keep quarterback Adon Okono for the 2025 season, while Minshew, who signed a 2-year, $25 million contract last March, will not be returning. This news probably doesn't surprise many fans, especially after Minshew's underwhelming performance last season. It's a bit disappointing because I honestly hoped he'd step up and prove he could compete at a high level in Las Vegas, but unfortunately, that never really happened. The team struggled all season, and the quarterback position remained a weak point. Ever since the Raiders parted ways with Derek Carr, they've been searching for a true franchise quarterback, and that quest is far from over. Keeping Okuno on the roster makes sense since he's a younger player with potential and could serve as a bridge quarterback while the team searches for their long-term answer. The big question for the Raiders now is finding that next franchise quarterback. The front office is expected to be active in both free agency and the NFL draft, so it's not surprising they would let go of one of the current quarterbacks. As for Minshew, the Raiders now face a decision: cut him before June 1st or after. If they cut him before that date, they'll save $6.3 million in cap space, but take on a $7.6 million dead cap hit. On the other hand, cutting him after June 1st would reduce the dead cap charge to $4.6 million. It seems like a tough call, but it's clear that the Raiders are ready to move in a new direction. I believe the Raiders should do what's best for their future and at least hold on to Gardner Minshew for now. However, if they can trade him for a draft pick, whether it's a 4th, 5th, 6th, or even 7th rounder, I think they should go for it. Sports Illustrated recently highlighted 3 potential trade destinations for Minshew if the Raiders decide to move him. The first team on the list is the Atlanta Falcons. With Michael Penix Jr. set to be the starter and Kirk Cousins likely heading into free agency, Minshew could be an ideal veteran backup for the Falcons. The other 2 teams mentioned are the Indianapolis Colts, the team Minshew came from, where he had a Pro Bowl season, and the Carolina Panthers. After a shaky start, Bryce Young seems to have turned his career around after just 1 season, and with Andy Dalton hitting free agency, Minshew could provide solid backup for him. Personally, I wouldn't mind keeping Minshew as a backup in Las Vegas, but considering the money he's making and how things have unfolded this season, it might be time for the Raiders to part ways. With Minshew most likely out the door, the big question for the Raiders is, who will be their next quarterback? There have been plenty of rumors and options floating around, especially with free agency coming up. One name that's been frequently discussed is Vikings quarterback Sam Darnold, and that could be an intriguing fit for Las Vegas moving forward. According to Albert Breer, the Raiders are expected to make a big splash in free agency with a projected $112 million in cap space, according to SpotTrack. While that sounds like a lot, it's important to remember that the Raiders will need to allocate some of that money to re-signing current players. They have quite a few key free agents on the roster, including Trayvon Mullen, Marcus Peters, Robert Spillane, and Adam Butler. The team's decision-makers, head coach Josh McDaniels, general manager Dave Ziegler, and even Tom Brady, will have to decide who to bring back. After that, the Raiders will likely have around $60 to $80 million in available cap space to use on new signings. One of the players being linked to the Raiders is top free agent quarterback Sam Darnold. According to Victor Tafer, Darnold could be one of the top targets for Las Vegas. While I wouldn't mind seeing him in silver and black, I've always been honest about the fact that Darnold isn't my top choice. The reason is simple. As the top free agent quarterback, he's likely to command a hefty price tag. The Raiders are expected to spend big, but I'm not sure it's worth investing so much in the quarterback position, especially considering what Darnold's market value might be. He could end up getting anywhere from $30 to $40 million per year, and that's a lot to commit to a quarterback, even one who could be a solid option for the team. If I were in charge of spending the Raiders' available cap space, I would focus on strengthening the offensive and defensive lines. Those areas need attention, and I'd also want to use the draft to add more talent at the skill positions. When it comes to the quarterback spot, I'd rather bring in a veteran on a minimum contract to serve as a bridge quarterback, and then use the draft to find the quarterback of the future. I know everyone has their own opinions on this, and that's totally okay. One reason I'm hesitant about pursuing Sam Darnold in free agency is not just the cost, but also because of the system he's coming from. Under Kyle Shanahan's system, Darnold has looked solid, and we've seen the success other quarterbacks have had there, like Kirk Cousins and J.J. McCarthy, who both looked great in that system. Darnold even had some flashes of being a franchise QB, but I wonder if he's truly the product of that system. I'm just not sure if he would perform the same way in Las Vegas with a different coaching staff and different players around him. Now, I could be wrong, and maybe with the right pieces, Darnold could thrive. I don't want to rule out anything, and if the Raiders decide to go all in on him, he could be a solid option. But it all comes down to the money. If the Raiders spend big on Darnold, it might leave them with little room to improve other key areas. For example, if they sign Darnold, they might not have enough cap space to pursue other big names, like running back Aaron Jones, who is also a free agent. So while I'm open to the idea, I'm cautious about how it would affect the Raiders' overall strategy and free agency. If the Raiders want to add a top wide receiver, they could look to the draft. One player who stands out to me is T-Mac, who I've been high on for this year's draft class. He's a big physical receiver who could immediately contribute to this offense and make an impact from day one. Another option could be Ashton Jensey, who could help strengthen the quarterback position. The possibilities are endless, but as I've said before, I'd hold off on Sam Darnold. I believe there are cheaper alternatives that could do just as good a job. We've also talked about Russell Wilson as a potential option. I wouldn't mind bringing him in on a team-friendly contract, as he could bring similar value to Darnold. Another quarterback who's been in the spotlight lately is Aaron Rodgers. I know some of you might cringe at the thought of him joining the Raiders, but we need to look at the numbers. The Jets are still on the hook for $84 million of his contract over the next 2 years, so he could potentially come to Las Vegas on a veteran minimum or a team-friendly deal. If that's the case, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him in. Think about the experience he brings to the table. Even though the Jets weren't great last season, Rodgers still showed he can perform at a high level, even at his age. He's still better than many quarterbacks in the league. One reason I believe he could thrive here in Las Vegas is the coaching staff. In New York, the coaching didn't exactly play to his strengths, but with the Raiders, he'd have a fresh opportunity to work with a different staff and offensive system. If he could come in at a reasonable price, Rodgers could be a great addition to the team. The Raiders have a lot of respected coaches with a wealth of experience, including some who know how to win big games. You've got Pete Carroll, John Spytek, Tom Brady, Chip Kelly, and Patrick Graham all contributing their expertise to the team. With this coaching staff, I believe the Raiders are in a great position to put together a strong, competitive team that can command respect, especially from veteran players. If the Raiders can surround Aaron Rodgers with the right defensive weapons, I believe the defense is already in solid shape. By using the available cap space wisely, they could bring in even more talent through free agency. Think of players like T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, or Aaron Jones. With Rodgers as the leader, they could invest in these pieces while still having room to draft the quarterback of the future. A guy like T-Mac or Jenny could be brought in, adding even more depth to the roster. I truly think the Raiders could turn this team around in just one offseason. They could draft a young quarterback in the second or third round, someone who can sit and learn under the guidance of experienced mentors like Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, and of course, Aaron Rodgers. With this kind of leadership and coaching, it's a setup for success. I know some of you might not agree with me, but that's how I feel. And you know what? Even Max Crosby, the Raiders' big man, wouldn't mind seeing Rodgers in Vegas. If Rodgers has a chance to win, why not come to Las Vegas? You never know what could happen, and this could be the chance the Raiders need to make a serious playoff push. If the Raiders brought Aaron Rodgers in, I wouldn't be upset about it. Now, let's talk about another quarterback who's been a topic of discussion. Former Raiders QB Derek Carr. I know there will be a lot of comments saying, no, don't bring him back, and you hate Derek Carr. But first, let me say this. I don't hate Derek Carr. I have a lot of respect for what he did for the Raiders, but I was one of the people who believed it was time to move on, and I still feel the same way. Would I want the Raiders to bring him back, either through a trade or free agency if the Saints release him? No, I wouldn't. I think the Raiders have moved past that chapter, and bringing him back wouldn't push the team forward. Looking at his contract, if the Saints release him, they'd still owe him $50 million in 2025 and $28 million in 2026. Shout out to my guy, the GOAT, for those numbers. If that happens, he could sign somewhere for a league minimum deal, or up to $10 million, which would be a team-friendly contract. But even at that price, I still wouldn't want Derek Carr back in Las Vegas. Say what you will, but I still believe that at this point in their careers, quarterbacks like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers are better options for the Raiders than Carr. That's just my opinion. The offseason is going to be wild, and the Raiders will have plenty of options. I can't wait to see what moves they make, who they sign, who they draft, and how they build this team moving forward. Now, Raider Nation, I want to hear from you. What do you think about the quarterback situation? Was letting go of Garoppolo the right move? Should the Raiders spend big money on a quarterback like Sam Darnold, or should they go for a veteran like Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, Marcus Mariota, or even Justin Fields? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.